need to have comprehensive mental health services. Half of the counties in the United States do not have psychiatrists. Over 100 million people in this country live in areas where there is not efficient mental health providers. And that's the problem. Until we put money and convince people to go in where the money is, they build hospitals, go get cardiac things, that's where the money is. And until we do that, people are going to be dying. Years ago when my son's medicine wasn't working, 3 times I took him to the emergency room. The 4th time we found out again. I'd be at work. I have to go home.
I think everyone in this room knows someone in their family or on their street that has mental illness.
And for too long, right, it's a disease that basically is in the shadows that people were embarrassed to talk about. So first of all, people standing up like you on behalf of your son and being willing to do that are making a difference. And for so long, we weren't even covering mental illness, requiring the insurance companies to do it. And we passed actually something called it was Paul Wellstone's last signature bill. And after he died, we got it over to Ted Kennedy and a few of us, and Patrick Kennedy got it done. And that is the Wellstone D-Minn mental health parity bill. You know that word, parity, that's right. And what's been really frustrating, we just had a big event with the Kennedys actually to talk about the anniversary of that bill passing, and it's made some difference, but we haven't gotten the rules in place, nor are they enforced the way that they should. So that would be my first priority, to do that. And the third is just changing the way we have coverage in this country overall. And we have community health centers now. We've rolled some of those out with the Affordable Care Act, but there should be more community mental health, and especially hard in rural areas, right? Because it's hard enough to get health care. That's why we have critical access hospitals. That's what we're working to keep those. So that is the other piece of it. But I think the big thing is to keep having people speak out like yourself, keep making clear this is an illness like any other illness. It's an illness that actually, depending on what type of mental health problem people have, can be solved, can be resolved. Sometimes it's therapy, sometimes it is medication, and we've got to make sure that medication is affordable, which gets into all the stuff we were just talking about with pharmaceuticals. But these two twin issues, I would say, mental health and drug addiction, for so long people have just tried to basically put them under the table, and that's not going to happen, and it's not going to happen when I'm president.
Thank you for your support of the fight on the cost of prescription medications. Many families, including mine, have people who require their medications to live. What, if any, role does the United States Patent Office play particularly in the availability of insulin in this country, which many people, including our daughter, require to live?
Thank you very much. This is what I love about Iowa. They're asking about patent offices. As you understand, there is this interrelationship with patents being denied, with lack of competition. And so we need to make it easy, actually, to get more competition in. Some of it, I've given you a few ideas. One of them is generics, right? I told you how the pharma companies are paying off generics. What's that about? Reducing competition, challenging patents, and making sure that we don't allow dominance in a market. Think about what happened with EpiPen, right? Remember that? I fought for that just like you're fighting. Because my daughter, I was senator, right? So you're a U.S. senator, and you find out that these costs of EpiPens have skyrocketed 3 or 4 times where they were supposed to be. Why? Well, they became the monopoly provider. There was no competition. One of their competitors got off the market, another one had issues. They became the monopoly. What did they do? They ran for it. They used it. They used it to their advantage. So getting generics on, making sure the patent rules don't just work for the companies, that they work for people and they work for competition, bringing in less expensive drugs that are safe from other countries. I did this with the drug shortage bill I passed when we found out kids weren't getting their life-saving cancer drugs. So we said to it was Obama who was president then, we said to them, okay, we know you aren't bringing other drugs in, but if kids are going to die, don't you think we have to allow for these other drugs to come in? And that then, those drugs come in, it's still not perfect, but it allows the government to go and allow those drugs to be sold when there is a shortage.
You could do the same thing with prices, right? The prices go too high, or if you don't have enough competitors, or you just allow it in like our bill does. When you do that, you have more competition and you finally have an incentive, and that includes with patents to have that done. Last thing I mentioned is all the research that goes into this that the government does. So you pay for the research for these drugs, and then you get screwed when they jack up the prices. That's basically what happens. So that is another thing we need to pursue to make sure that we get our piece of the action when we're paying for the research. All right?
I
Okay.
have a question. What's your take on immigration and asylum?
Okay.
I didn't hear anything about
Okay.
people of
I
color,
always talk about
LGBT, and
immigration.
Latinos.
And so I actually focused on prescription drugs, so I had Lindsay at lunch. Well, let's blame Lindsay. Yeah, okay. Just kidding. Okay, so I always talk about immigration. It's probably not the first time I have, so I'm ready to talk about it. Okay, number one, we need comprehensive immigration reform. Actually, George Bush was president and Ted Kennedy asked me to go work on that bill. It was an amazing experience. We almost passed it. It wasn't because Bush didn't want it. We didn't pass it because that was when the right-wing, basically, machine started bringing it down. Then we tried again when Obama was president. You remember that, this last effort. And we actually passed it through the U.S. Senate. And so when you talk about immigration reform and asylum and all those things, I think we all know here in Iowa, just like I know at home, that we all stand on the shoulders of immigrants, right? When I was in Waterloo, I got asked by Swiss TV about my Swiss immigrants. They like tracked me down there. Like, okay, this is so cool, and this is really going to help my base strategy to win the presidency. But in fact, what was interesting, and I'm sure you have your story, my grandparents both came from Switzerland. My grandma came when she was 3. My great-grandma became a cheesemaker, of course, all cliche. But my grandpa came through Ellis Island, had trouble getting in. There was a quota. He ended up coming through Canada, and then ended up meeting my grandma living in Milwaukee, but was an alien until he applied for citizenship right before World War II. And that's when they realized he'd come in kind of twice. And they gave him alien status, and then there's this really happy picture of him 20 years after he came to America with a bow tie smiling, and he became a U.S. citizen just a few weeks before we got into World War II. That's my story. So comprehensive immigration reform is the answer, and what is not the answer is how Donald Trump talks about
I
it.
agree, but the problem is not, the problem we have in the culture about immigration right now is not like with people that are white like me. You look at me, and if I'm not talking, who knows I'm an immigrant? I'm one of you guys. But when I speak and start speaking, people start looking weird. But the main problem is with our brothers and sisters that are people of color. Those are the ones that are refused on the border. Those are the ones that are persecuted. If you are white, you are okay. But if you are a brown immigrant,
Okay.
what?
Okay, thank you. So let's just talk through that. So what the bill does, that bill that I want to pass, and I'll propose again in the first year, and I actually think we can get this done, is a bill that says, one, we'll have security money at the border. We're not going to build a wall for $7 billion or $8 billion. And by the way, how great was that vote when we had 12 Republicans, including Mitt Romney, join with us to take on the wall. All right. So what the bill does and how we need to talk about this issue, there is morality to this, but there is an economic engine of immigration in this country, right? Nearly 70 of our Fortune 500 companies are headed up by immigrants. 25% of our U.S. Nobel laureates were born in other countries. True fact. Immigrants don't diminish America, they are America. And in the Midwest, we need immigrants in our farms, we need immigrants that bring in new ideas, that work in our hospitals, especially in rural areas. And Donald Trump has not only shunned immigration in terms of making people feel like they don't want to come to our country, he's also made it very hard for the people that have been here forever. So comprehensive immigration, sir, is a path to citizenship. It's money at the border, and my favorite talking point in Iowa with some of your maybe more fiscally minded friends is that it brings the debt down. This is the 2013 bill that we passed by $158 billion in 10 years. But people are no longer living in the shadow. That That's why it's a bill that was supported by the AFL-CIO and the Chamber. It's a bill that was supported by the migrant groups, as well as the Farmers Union and the Farm Bureau, all right? Because people see it as moving forward as a nation, and we need to start talking about it as an economic imperative. Thank you, everyone.